need to preheat it artificially to start it. So that takes about 10 minutes.
And what's the 2 flywheels, but it looks like, what is the spring on this other wheel for?
This weight here, which is pivoted off center from the flywheel, is what senses the RPM. And this, when it reaches a balance against the spring, that's it adjusts the stroke on the fuel injection pump. So if you put more load and it starts to slow down, it pumps more fuel, and so it'll hold the same speed all the time.
And these counterweights? Or?
Well, these are the weights on the governor, and they're roughly equivalent one to another, but because it's off center, it tends to twist the faster it goes. Prime the oil system.
So that just hand cranks the oil into the crankcase?
It goes down 3 lines. One goes to the cylinder, which is this one that goes to there. One goes eventually to the connecting rod big end bearing. It's a dry sump. It's a 2-cycle engine. Sucks air in the back of the crankcase. When the piston comes back, it compresses the air, and it goes into the cylinder.
And what were you just doing with your finger? Just moving it along?
That was turning the ring oiler on the right main bearing to get some oil to that bearing, which doesn't run. It's a little bit off center, so it doesn't run until by itself until the engine warms up a fair amount.
And those are 3 spark plugs?
Excuse me?
Oh, these are, no.
No, those are the oil lines. There's no electricity on this engine whatsoever. You preheat the glow plug, the hot tube, and with propane, and then once it's running you can turn that off, and it just runs from the heat of compression aided with the heat it's retained from the prior combustion. Runs on diesel, would run on heavy oil, motor oil, run on salad oil, would run just about on any oil except gasoline. Would run on kerosene very nicely.
And what's this drain back at the end? Is that for used oil, or?
That, to the extent you collect any oil in the crankcase, it drains out, and you leave it open just a little bit, and you'll hear some air coming and going. So it drains. You would not want to accumulate oil in there, because if it started getting picked up and carried into the cylinder, it would be burning that oil, and regardless of the amount that the governor was giving it, so it would become uncontrolled. So you don't want a runaway engine.
And this blue part is the generator.
It's a generator. That's an 8-kilowatt generator, which the cord goes to the house, and once we get the engine started, we'll throw the switch in the house, and we'll be powering the house and the guest house with the generator off of this engine.
And how is the energy stored?
Well, there's no energy stored. There's some energy stored in the flywheels as it goes around. It's just each time it goes around, it hits, and so that keeps the energy going. But as far as the electrical energy, it just generates it, and you use it at the time.
So if you lost electricity, then you'd start this up. It'd run the house. But how much fuel do you have? How long could you sustain?
The fuel tank is about 5 gallons, and it would run it under typical household loads for about 8 hours.
And what is this part?
That's the exhaust pot. It's just a open chamber where the exhaust gases go into and acts as a muffler, and then the exhaust gases go out the vertical pipe.
And what's the history of this machine? Where did it come from?
This engine came from a well site where it pumped water. The well site was near Napapo in Hawaii, and the facility was a coffee processing plant that used the water. My guess is it was probably used until around 1960 or so, when public water would have become available and wasn't needed anymore.
Is there a temperature gauge on the engine to know when the propane is heated it up enough?
No, the temperature gauge is for the water temperature when it's running, to know whether you've adjusted it properly. You look for the heated up enough by whether the hot tube is red hot or not.
And did you build the structure to house the engine?
A friend of mine basically built it with my assistance.
When was this? When did you build the structure?
Basically March, April kind of time frame. Engine was made in 1931 by the Fairbanks Morse Company in Beloit, Wisconsin. It's a 1912 design. It was in production, I believe, until around 1938 or so.
I'm sorry, where is the company located?
Beloit, Wisconsin. It's probably warm enough now. I will give it 3 strokes, short strokes of fuel, then rotate it back, and then I'll turn it over and hopefully it'll start. There's the compression release. I'm going to go up to the house and put it on electricity.
Success?
What?
Success?
Yeah, it's running the house.